There is a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It whispers. It sits quietly at the dinner table. It follows you into your bedroom at night. It appears when your own child speaks to you without warmth, without patience, without respect. Growing old is not the hardest part of life. The hardest part is feeling invisible in the presence of the people you once carried in your arms. Have you ever felt that? Have you ever spoken, and no one truly listened? Before we continue, tell me in the comments, you are watching this from where? Brazil dari mana? I truly want to know where you are listening from today, because this message is for every parent, in every corner of the world, who feels unseen. When children are young, they need us for everything. We feed them, protect them, stay awake when they are sick. We sacrifice quietly. We do not keep score. But time changes roles. Children grow. Parents age. And sometimes, without anyone noticing when it started, the tone shifts. The patience disappears. The respect fades. It does not always happen with shouting. Sometimes it is silence. Short answers. Irritated sighs. Cancelled visits. Forgotten birthdays. Conversations that feel rushed, as if your existence is an obligation instead of a blessing. And you begin to question yourself. Did I do something wrong? Am I asking for too much? Is this just part of getting old? Let me tell you something important. Aging does not reduce your value. Wrinkles do not erase your wisdom. Slower steps do not cancel your sacrifices. Respect is not a reward for being useful. It is a basic human dignity, especially for the parents who gave everything. But here is the difficult truth. Sometimes when children become adults, they carry stress, ego, pride, and unresolved emotions. And instead of communicating, they distance themselves. Instead of appreciating, they criticize. Not always because they hate you, but sometimes because they are immature in ways no one sees. Still, understanding the reason does not remove the pain. If your children ignore you, if they speak without respect, if they treat you as a burden instead of a blessing, you must not let that slowly break your spirit. Because your peace in old age matters. Your dignity matters. Your emotional health matters. In this video, we will talk honestly about what to do. Calmly, wisely, and with strength. Not with revenge. Not with bitterness. But with self-respect. Because growing old should not mean shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's comfort. And this is only the beginning. The first mistake many older parents make when they feel ignored is this. They begin to beg for attention. Not always with words, but with actions. They call too often. They apologize too quickly. They try to be overly helpful. They shrink their own needs just to avoid conflict. And slowly, without realizing it, they teach others that their feelings are negotiable. Respect cannot grow in a space where you constantly lower yourself. When you were younger, you may have tolerated discomfort for the sake of peace. But in old age, peace should not require self-erasure. If your child speaks harshly, you do not need to shout back. But you also do not need to pretend it did not hurt. Silence is powerful when it carries dignity, not fear. Sometimes, the healthiest response is calm distance. Distance does not mean hatred. It means emotional boundaries. It means choosing not to participate in conversations where you are belittled. It means ending a phone call politely when the tone becomes disrespectful. It means saying, "We can talk again when we both feel calm." That sentence alone carries strength. Many parents are afraid of losing connection. They think, if I speak up, my child will leave completely. But ask yourself this, if you must accept humiliation to keep someone close, is that closeness real? Love that requires you to suffer in silence is not healthy love. Growing older gives you something powerful. Perspective. You have lived through loss, hardship, sacrifice, and change. You are no longer desperate for approval. At least, you should not be. Your worth is not determined by how often your children visit or how sweet their messages sound. And here is something important. Sometimes your calm boundary becomes a mirror. When you stop over-explaining, when you stop chasing, when you stop tolerating disrespect, your child may begin to reflect. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly. People often appreciate what feels steady and self-assured. If they still choose distance after you choose dignity, then you have your answer. You cannot control their behavior. You can only control your response. And your response should protect your peace, not destroy it. Remember this. You raised them with strength. Do not abandon that strength now. Because the goal in old age is not to win arguments. It is to preserve your heart. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to stand calmly in your worth and refuse to beg for what should have been freely given. One quiet habit that slowly weakens many aging parents is the need to constantly explain themselves. When children misunderstand, they explain. When children accuse, they defend. When children criticize, they justify. Over time, conversations become exhausting courtrooms where you feel like the defendant instead of the parent. You do not need to defend your entire life story. There comes a season in life when your experiences speak louder than your explanations. You worked. You sacrificed. You endured sleepless nights and silent worries no one ever saw. If your grown children cannot recognize that by now, repeating yourself will not suddenly create clarity. Sometimes, over-explaining signals insecurity. And insecurity invites more questioning. This does not mean you become cold or distant. It means you choose calm confidence. If your child says, "You were never there for me," instead of launching into a long defense, you can respond gently, "I did my best with what I had." Then stop. Let silence carry the weight of truth. Silence, when it is grounded in self-respect, is not weakness. It is maturity. As parents grow older, there is also a natural shift in authority. Your children are adults now. They make their own decisions. They interpret the past in their own way. You cannot control their memories. But you do not have to accept unfair narratives either. If a conversation repeatedly turns into blame, you are allowed to step away. You are allowed to say, "I don't see it that way, but I respect your feelings." That sentence protects your dignity without escalating conflict. Many seniors fear that not explaining means losing connection. In reality, constant defending often creates more distance. People rarely listen when emotions are high. But they notice composure. They notice steadiness. There is strength in knowing who you are without needing constant validation. You are not required to rewrite your past to satisfy someone else's present frustration. You are not required to carry guilt for choices that were made with love, even if imperfect. Parenting has never been about perfection. It has always been about intention. And if your intention was love, that truth stands firm, even if someone refuses to see it. One painful realization many parents face in old age is this: you are no longer the center of your children's world. They have careers, spouses, responsibilities, and distractions you may not fully understand. And sometimes, without meaning to, you begin competing with those priorities. You compare how often they visit their friends. You notice how quickly they respond to work messages but take hours to reply to yours. You measure love through frequency. And quietly, your heart keeps score. But love is not always measured in minutes. When you compete for attention, it creates tension. Your child may feel pressured. You may feel rejected. And what began as a desire for closeness slowly turns into emotional distance. Instead of demanding to be first, choose to be steady. Steadiness builds respect. When you understand that their lives are full, you stop interpreting every delay as neglect. Not every missed call is intentional disrespect. Not every short message means indifference. Sometimes it is simply the pace of modern life. However, understanding their busyness does not mean accepting neglect. There is a difference between busy and unwilling. The key is observation without desperation. Watch patterns calmly. Do they show care in other ways? Do they check in eventually? Do they include you in important moments? If the answer is yes, then patience strengthens the bond. If the answer is no, then your response should be clarity, not competition. You do not need to remind them constantly of your sacrifices. You do not need to compare yourself to their in-laws or their friends. That comparison only wounds you. Your role is unique. It cannot be replaced, and it does not need to be advertised. Maturity in old age means loving without clinging. It means offering presence without pressure. It means saying, "I understand you're busy. Call me when you're free," and truly meaning it. That calm confidence shifts the energy of the relationship. When children feel guilt, they avoid. When they feel respected, they return more willingly. And here is a powerful truth. Your emotional stability becomes your greatest influence. When you are peaceful, when you are secure, when you are not competing for position, your presence feels safe. And people naturally move toward what feels safe. Growing older is not about fighting for attention. It is about embodying quiet strength. Let them build their lives. Let them make mistakes. Let them grow. And you, remain grounded, dignified, and steady. Because a steady heart commands more respect than a demanding voice ever could. As you grow older, your energy changes. You may not walk as fast as before. You may not stay awake as late. But more importantly, your emotional energy becomes more precious than ever. And one of the greatest mistakes seniors make is allowing that energy to be drained by repeated disappointment. Every ignored call. Every dismissive tone. Every cancelled visit. These moments seem small on the surface, but over time they accumulate. And if you are not careful, they begin to shape your mood, your sleep, even your health. Emotional stress does not disappear just because you stay quiet about it. Your body feels what your heart carries. That is why protecting your emotional energy is not selfish, it is necessary. If a conversation always leaves you anxious, shorten it. If a topic always leads to tension, avoid it. If a visit consistently makes you feel small, reduce the frequency. You are not required to endure emotional harm simply because someone is your child. There is a difference between unconditional love and unlimited tolerance. You can love deeply while still setting limits. You can care sincerely while still choosing peace over conflict. Many older parents fear that creating boundaries will push their children away. But constantly absorbing disrespect slowly pushes you away from yourself. And losing yourself is far more dangerous than losing approval. Peace is not found in controlling others. It is found in controlling access to your emotional space. Fill your days with people who speak kindly. Spend time on activities that calm your mind. Reconnect with friends who value your presence. Join communities that remind you that you still matter. Your identity is larger than one relationship. When your world becomes fuller, you rely less on one source of validation. And here is something powerful. When your child sees that you are emotionally stable without clinging, something shifts. They may begin to approach you differently. Not because you demanded it, but because your calm independence commands respect. Growing older gives you permission to prioritize serenity. You have already spent decades giving your energy to others. Now is the time to guard it wisely. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. But with quiet discernment. Because your remaining years deserve softness, not constant stress. And protecting your emotional energy is one of the most loving decisions you can make. For yourself. There is a sensitive truth many parents hesitate to face. Sometimes, financial support becomes the only thread holding the relationship together. You help with bills. You pay for emergencies. You give loans that are never repaid. And quietly, you hope that generosity will protect the bond. But money cannot buy respect. In fact, when support is given without boundaries, it can unintentionally create imbalance. Your child may begin to see assistance as obligation rather than kindness. Gratitude fades. Expectation grows. And when expectation replaces appreciation, tension follows. Ask yourself honestly, if the financial help stopped, would the communication remain the same? This question is not meant to create suspicion. It is meant to create clarity. Love should not feel like a transaction. If you notice that warmth appears only when assistance is needed, that pattern deserves attention. As you grow older, your financial security becomes deeply important. Medical needs increase. Stability matters more. Peace of mind often depends on knowing you are safe. Sacrificing your own security to maintain approval is not noble, it is risky. Generosity is beautiful when it is voluntary and respected. It becomes harmful when it is expected and unappreciated. You are allowed to say, "I cannot help this time." You are allowed to say, "I need to think about it." You are allowed to say no without explaining your entire bank account. Saying no does not mean you love less. It means you are thinking long-term. It means you are honoring the years you worked to build stability. It means you understand that constant rescuing can prevent growth. Sometimes, when parents always step in, children never fully learn responsibility. And when responsibility is delayed, maturity is delayed as well. If your financial help has been tied to disrespect, it is time to separate the two. Offer guidance instead of money. Offer wisdom instead of rescue. Offer emotional support without self-sacrifice. And observe carefully what changes. If respect increases when money decreases, you have strengthened the relationship. If connection disappears when assistance stops, then the truth was already there, you simply had not tested it. Growing older requires courage. Not loud courage. Quiet courage. The courage to protect what you have built. The courage to stop funding behavior that wounds you. Because love should be freely given, not financially negotiated. One of the deepest pains in aging is realizing that your children may never fully understand your sacrifices. They did not see the nights you cried quietly. They did not feel the weight of bills, fear, or uncertainty that you carried alone. And sometimes, they judge your past decisions with the comfort of hindsight. It hurts. Because inside, you want them to say, "Now I understand." You want recognition. You want acknowledgement. You want them to see you not just as a parent, but as a human being who tried their best. But here is a liberating truth. You may never receive that moment. And that is okay. Waiting for validation can quietly imprison your peace. If your emotional stability depends on someone finally understanding you, you hand them control over your happiness. True freedom in old age comes when you release that need. Understanding is beautiful when it happens naturally. But demanding it often creates resistance. Your children grew up in a different time. They see the world through different experiences. Their expectations may not match the realities you faced decades ago. That does not mean your choices were wrong. It means life evolves. Instead of fighting to be understood, focus on being at peace with yourself. Ask yourself gently, did I act with love? Did I try my best with what I knew at the time? If the answer is yes, let that be enough. You do not need a public apology. You do not need a dramatic realization from them. Your quiet confidence is sufficient. When you stop chasing understanding, something shifts inside you. Conversations feel lighter. You listen without defensiveness. You speak without desperation. And interestingly, when you are no longer pushing to be validated, people sometimes begin to listen more openly. But even if they do not, your peace remains intact. Growing older is not about rewriting history. It is about accepting it with compassion. Compassion for your children's limitations. And compassion for your own humanity. You were not a perfect parent. No one is. But perfection was never the requirement. Love was. Release the need to be fully understood. Because the greatest comfort in old age is not external approval, it is internal acceptance. And when you truly accept yourself, misunderstanding loses its power to wound you. Dangerous emotional traps in old age is making your children the center of your entire world. For decades, that may have been natural. Your schedule revolved around them. Your priorities were shaped by their needs. Your dreams were often postponed for their future. But now, life has shifted. If your happiness still depends entirely on how often they call, visit, or praise you, then your emotional stability rests in hands you cannot control. And that creates constant vulnerability. Your children are part of your life. They are not the whole of it. There is a quiet strength that comes when you begin building a life that feels meaningful beyond parenthood. Reconnect with old hobbies. Join a community group. Volunteer. Travel locally. Learn something new. Even small routines, morning walks, reading circles, gardening, can restore a sense of identity. Identity protects dignity. When your world expands, rejection feels smaller. When your days are full, waiting feels lighter. When your heart is engaged elsewhere, disappointment loses intensity. You are no longer sitting in silence hoping for the phone to ring. And here is something powerful. Independence often increases respect. When children see that you are emotionally fulfilled, socially active, and mentally engaged, they stop viewing you as fragile. They begin to see you as strong. Strength invites admiration. Desperation invites avoidance. This does not mean you detach emotionally. It means you balance your attachments. There is also healing in friendships at your stage of life. Other seniors understand experiences your children cannot fully grasp. Shared laughter. Shared memories. Shared wisdom. These connections remind you that you still belong. Growing older should not feel like shrinking into a corner. It should feel like stepping into a calmer, wiser version of yourself. Yes, you love your children. That will never change. But love does not require dependency. It thrives best when both sides stand on their own feet. If your children ignore you sometimes, let that space be filled with purpose, not loneliness. Because your life story did not end when they grew up. In many ways, this chapter is about rediscovering who you are, beyond the title of mother or father. And when you live fully, you send a quiet message to the world. You are still here. You still matter. And your life is still beautifully yours. As you grow older, you begin to understand something deeply. Holding anger for too long is heavy. It affects your sleep. It tightens your chest. It steals small joys from ordinary days. If your children have hurt you with words, neglect, or disrespect, the wound may feel personal, and it is. But carrying resentment for years will not teach them a lesson. It will only exhaust you. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is emotional freedom. However, forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. It does not mean allowing the same behavior to continue without consequence. True forgiveness releases bitterness while still protecting boundaries. You can say in your heart, I choose not to hate you, while also saying in your actions, I will not accept being treated this way. That balance is maturity. Many older parents confuse forgiveness with tolerance. They think being kind means absorbing pain silently. But kindness toward others should never cancel kindness toward yourself. Your heart deserves protection too. When you forgive wisely, you free your spirit from constant replay. You stop rehearsing old arguments in your mind. You stop imagining what you should have said. You stop waiting for an apology that may never come. And something peaceful happens inside you. You begin to respond instead of react. If your child speaks sharply, you no longer explode or collapse. You remain steady. If they ignore you for days, you no longer spiral into self-blame. You observe calmly. Your emotional balance stays intact. That is power. But remember this clearly, forgiving someone does not lower your value. It does not mean you deserve less. In fact, it proves your strength. It shows that your dignity does not depend on revenge or retaliation. Still, never forget your worth. If patterns of disrespect continue despite your grace, you are allowed to create stronger distance. You are allowed to protect your environment. You are allowed to choose relationships that feel safe. Growing older is not about winning emotional battles. It is about choosing peace wisely. Forgive so your heart can rest. But never forget that you are a parent who gave life, time, and love. And that alone makes you worthy of respect, whether others recognize it or not. At a certain point in life, you begin to realize something profound. You cannot control how others treat you, but you can control how much access they have to your peace. When your children were young, control was necessary. You guided them. You corrected them. You protected them from danger. But now they are adults. Their choices, their attitudes, and even their mistakes belong to them. Trying to control grown children often leads to frustration. You may want them to call more, to visit more, to speak more gently, to appreciate you openly. These desires are natural. They come from love. But when love turns into constant expectation, disappointment becomes a daily companion. Peace begins when control ends. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you release the illusion that you can shape their behavior through guilt, pressure, or sacrifice. You accept that respect must come from their maturity, not your manipulation. And if maturity is delayed, your serenity does not have to be. Choosing peace is an intentional act. It means waking up and deciding that today, you will not measure your worth by someone else's attention. It means refusing to let one cold message ruin your entire afternoon. It means protecting your thoughts from spiraling into worst-case stories. You remind yourself gently, I have done my part. That sentence carries enormous freedom. You raised them with the knowledge you had. You loved them in the ways you understood. You made mistakes, yes, but you also made sacrifices no one fully saw. That chapter is complete. What remains now is your own well-being. Old age should not feel like a courtroom where your parenting is constantly on trial. It should feel like a season of reflection, wisdom, and emotional refinement. If your children respect you, cherish it. If they struggle to show it, respond with calm strength. If they distance themselves, do not chase at the cost of your dignity. You are not powerless. Your greatest power now lies in your response. In your steadiness. In your refusal to let bitterness define your final chapters. Choose peace over control. Choose dignity over desperation. Choose quiet confidence over emotional chaos. Because growing old is not about becoming smaller. It is about becoming wiser, lighter, and freer inside. And no one, not even your own children, should have the power to take that away from you.